Art actually is based on the notion that if you would really celebrate an idea or a principle, you must think, you must plan, you must put yourself completely in the state of devotion.
This is a video essay about the 1943 Milla Deren film, Meshes of the Afternoon, which I first saw in September 1995. Now, I first learned about the film in 1989 when I read about it in a book. Books are great. I saw this still from the film a number of times in a number of books over the years between when I first heard about the film and when I finally saw it. Between 1989, when I first heard about Meshes, and 1995, when I first saw the film, I would often find myself in groups of film people, and fairly often I would be asked if I'd seen Meshes of the Afternoon, and I would then have to sigh, lower my head, and reluctantly admit that I had never seen the film. Oh, the shame. Now, I could never fully understand how these people had seen the film either. Remember, this was back in the old days. There was no YouTube where you could find obscure older films, and short films were basically never available for rental at video stores. Where the hell were they seeing this film? I had no idea. And then, in 1995, I finally got to see Meshes while studying film with Ray Dirgnet. If you're a film theory person, then you're probably saying, wow, the Ray Dirgnet? And if you're a normal person, you're probably saying, the hell is Ray Dirgnet? After Ray Dirgnet's lecture, I approached him and asked if I could borrow the copy of Meshes that he'd shown to us. He said yes. I took it home and then watched it about 8 times that night. Borrowing a film from a teacher or lecturer, if it piqued my interest, and I didn't know how to get hold of it otherwise, was not a new move for me. I did this with Chien, Andalou, a 1967 film Face to Face, and Harold Lloyd's Speedy, to name a few others. Now, the first thing I want to focus on here is the roughly 6 years between when I first heard about the film and when I finally saw it. Because once you've heard about a thing but not encountered it, it is able to be anything you can imagine. It is formless, ever-changing, flexible in a way that only the imagination can be. What are these meshes? What happens in this afternoon? Who is this woman? In my mind, the film was everything it could possibly be, as I had absolutely no clear idea of what the film even was. And if you have an experience like this, once you finally watch the film in question, that it can be anything shape morphs into the shape of what the film actually is. You can feel that transformation happening inside your mind. That might sound obvious, but I think it's an important thing to consider when thinking and talking about meshes. The space between something being simultaneously anything and everything and something being one particular concrete thing. So what is Meshes of the Afternoon? Meshes of the Afternoon is a short film, just under 14 minutes long, technically created by a married couple, Milla Deren and Alexander Hamid, in 1943, but really we tend to think of this film as belonging more to Milla Deren than Alexander Hamid. More on that later. It features a woman walking along a pathway, following a mysterious figure whose face is made of mirror. The woman comes home, explores her house, goes to sleep, and has a repeating dream about this mirror-faced figure. She then encounters a number of doppelgangers of herself in the dream, keys, knives, telephones. She is eventually woken by a man who takes her through several of the same beats that the mirror-faced figure took her through. We then learn that this is also probably a dream, and we see the man come home to find the woman apparently dead in the chair she was sleeping in. The end. But Meshes is impactful not necessarily because of what it's about, but rather because of the vibe it creates. The film resonates with the mood of something murderous or fatalistic. The whole time you're watching it, you can tell that violence or death is right there on the fringes. The film features a number of repeated objects: a flower, a telephone, a key, a knife, a mirror, and it might well be the image of the knife or broken pieces of mirror that builds the mood of impending and unavoidable violence. But let's talk about these objects quickly. You see, when the film was first released, and for years afterwards, audiences would latch onto these objects as symbols and try to interpret what they represented or meant. And this drove Milla Deren nuts. Here is the thing about viewing the objects as symbols in Meshes. Freudian viewers would watch the film and spiral into interpreting what the use of these objects meant. For example, what could the poppy in the film's opening moments possibly mean? Perhaps it symbolizes desire or love, or perhaps, considering that opium is gathered from a poppy, it symbolizes altered states. Maybe this isn't a film about a dream, maybe it's a film about an altered state. Maya hated all this kind of thing. For one thing, the film was created using $274.90, which in today's money is just over $5,000, and pretty much all of this went on the camera, which Maya bought after coming into a little money after her father died. When Maya needed a flower in the film, she had to get a fake flower because they had to reuse it and she didn't want it to change, and she had to get something large which registered easily as a flower on camera. She didn't want to run the risk of getting a flower that wouldn't be immediately recognizable as a flower. So she went to the store, and the best and cheapest available option to her was the fake poppy, which was why she bought it. Nothing to do with it meaning anything. It's just a flower. Secondly, Milla Deren felt that if you're watching a film and you start wondering what the objects in the film might symbolize, you are no longer thinking about the film in front of you. You're now thinking about something else. Her example of this was seeing an image of a cross on the screen and then starting to think about the crucifixion. You're now no longer even considering the image of a cross in the film you're watching. You're thinking about the crucifixion. You're thinking about something else. And Milla didn't want her audience to do this. She wanted them to watch the film and to see the objects she had chosen in the context of the film and to simply feel the flow of the film, not to go somewhere else. For those of you who think objects in films need to be interpreted, you might want to think about a wooden table. When you're looking at a wooden table, you're not thinking about the whirls and swirls and knots in the wood and what they might represent or how they came to be. You're simply taking in all of the table at once, both as a whole as well as all of those small details that make up that whole. Milla Deren was, in fact, so against object interpretation in meshes that in 1959, 16 years after the film was first released, she asked her third husband, Teiji Ito, to record a score for her intentionally silent film in an effort to create more of a flow and to discourage interpretation. That's dedication. And the second thing that struck me about meshes was this. In 1943, Milla Deren and Alexander Hamid were a married couple. One morning they woke up and Milla turned to Alexander and said, "Why don't we make a film?" Or "Let's make a film," or words to that effect. And so they made a film, because they wanted to. While Alexander Hamid was a cinematographer and had worked on films since 1930, being DP and director on a number of projects, Milla Deren had no background or training in film at all. She wasn't even much of a moviegoer. So the story goes, Milla told Alexander Hamid what kind of images she wanted to capture, and he then helped her to achieve them, one by one, step by step. Because of this, Meshes of the Afternoon is what you might call an amateur film. Now, amateur can be a bit of a dirty word to some people, but let's think of an amateur as someone who is doing something because they want to do it and not because they're getting paid to do it. They have a burning interest and/or passion drive to do the thing they're doing, which no one is paying them to do. Some famous examples of this include Charles Darwin, Gregor Mendel, Mary Anning, three people who pushed forward our understanding of specific things simply because they were interested in them. In filmmaking, we tend to think of amateur filmmakers as not real, and people who get paid as real filmmakers. But amateur filmmakers are making films because they want to, and they often do things that people who are getting paid are unable to do. Amateurs can push the medium of film forward in a way that professionals are often unable. You might disagree with this, but let's consider the fact that in 2022, an incredible 79 years after Meshes of the Afternoon was created, the film was voted the 16th greatest film ever made in the Sight and Sound poll. What an incredible moment. When I first read about this, I wanted to pick up a magical telephone that could transport my voice across the years and say, "Maya, it's your cousin Marvin Deren," because I was ecstatic that she was being celebrated in this way, that she was finally getting the recognition that she and the film deserved. But then I remembered this moment from an interview with Hannah Arendt, where she says,
Jetzt fragen Sie über die Wirkung. Es ist also, wenn wir auf die erste Frage zurückkommen, und wenn ich ironisch reden darf, es ist eine männliche Frage. Männer wollen immer furchtbar gern wirken und ich sehe das gewissermaßen von außen. Ich selber wirke, nein, ich will verstehen. Und wenn andere Menschen verstehen, im selben Sinne wie ich verstanden habe, dann gibt mir das eine Befriedigung wie ein Heimatsgefühl.
And I thought that maybe I was just being male and that Milla Deren wouldn't necessarily be looking for recognition or praise in the way that I thought she might. As a kind of addendum to the difference between a male and a female perspective, between the amateur and the professional, there was another filmmaker born just 2 years before Milla Deren, who also made their first feature film under the tutelage of an experienced director of photography who taught them lessons they would carry for the rest of their life. Both films made the Sight and Sound poll in 2022. Interesting, no?
What would you like to win? Everything you hate.
Kind of connected to all of this, there is also the story of the Milla Jovovich album, The Divine Comedy. Following her appearance in Dazed and Confused, or rather the amount of her performance that ended up on the cutting room floor, model and actress Milla Jovovich, who was also born in Ukraine, just like Milla Deren, and who also emigrated to the United States at the age of 6, just like Milla Deren, decided to step out of films for a bit and try being a pop star. She released the album The Divine Comedy in 1994 and released one single from that album, which was called The Gentleman Who Fell. A video for the song was directed by Lisa Bonet and featured Harry Dean Stanton. It's this video that you're watching right here. But Milla Jovovich, in her infinite wisdom, decided that the video didn't quite capture the mood of the song. So with the remaining budget from the video shoot, which allegedly was very little money, Milla hired Kate Garner and Paul Archard to direct a replacement video. A male-female director combo, just like Meshes, and they created a video specifically riffing on Meshes of the Afternoon, starring Milla Jovovich. Garner and Archard filmed an 8mm version of Meshes, 51 years after the film was made, and it's really kind of fascinating. Now, I would have almost certainly seen this video because between 1989 and 2001, I watched a great deal of MTV, but I would have likely first seen this video before I saw Maya Deren's film, so I wouldn't have got the reference back then. Obviously, I noticed it when I saw the video post-1995, I remember this. Most people who saw the video probably never went on to watch Meshes, but I don't know if that's so important. What matters is that it was out there, in the ether, floating around in the air, vibing. Meshes of the Afternoon is that kind of film. It's out there, in the ether, vibing. If you haven't seen Meshes, I would, of course, encourage you to do so, but I would also encourage you to see Maya Deren's other films. She's a huge name in filmmaking and has only around 75 minutes of completed films out there. You could watch all of them in an afternoon, and your life may feel all the better for doing so.
What I do in my films is I think very distinctively, I think they are the films of a woman, and I think that their characteristic time quality is the time quality of a woman. I think that the strength of men is their great sense of immediacy. They are a now creature, and a woman has strength to wait because she's had to wait.